Good morning.
Good morning.
Two comments I'd like to make that many people don't know. First, if you marry someone who is undocumented, that person does not automatically become a citizen, and this presents troubles for families very quickly. We separate them upon marriage in this country. Second, if you were not born in this country, yet you graduate from high school, you are Americanized, you speak English, you cannot go to college. You cannot get those sorts of federal loans that students need. And you become part of a quiet subculture because you are not part of the mainstream. And I do not see why the children of this country should pay in such a way, nor our society, because these individuals who could be the workforce of our nation remain marginalized and uneducated. In addition, in this city, I want to tell you of two instances because I have spoken with undocumented workers. One where a local mall was built largely by the labor of undocumented workers, which we don't consider, but they've built the places where we now shop. Second of all, a local plant was raided on one shift, and before that raid was done, the plant owners were calling employees to come back for the next shift, saying, you won't be raided. So how is this fair? That just because you were second shift, you got picked up, and then the employer asks for the third shift's employees to come back to provide the labor that provides services for our country. So we are taking advantage of undocumented workers on a daily basis that is unjust, that does not meet the principles of the foundation of this country, nor the faith of many like myself. And so my statement reads, the Unitarian Universalist Council of Greater Cincinnati is in full support of the principles to guide Ohio's immigration discussion drafted by Mark. It is time for a productive and principled discussion of the plight of our immigrant and undocumented brothers and sisters in these United States of America. Unitarian Universalism is built on a set of principles, the first being recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Not every citizen, every person, every human being. The second principle calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, not for some, but for all. How else would you have a fair society? The Unitarian Universalist Association's national campaign, Standing on the Side of Love, speaks directly to the values of inclusion, diversity, and equality. Our immigration system is taking children from their parents and tearing our nation apart. Any system which breaks up families is in itself broken, and I may add destructive to society as a whole. Hospitality is central to spiritual life and a good community. The inhospitality and cruelty shown to immigrants today weakens the soul of our nation. As people of faith, we are called to stand with the vulnerable and oppressed. We are called to welcome the stranger. Love is about justice, not sentimentality. Standing on the side of love is choosing to stand with all those excluded, marginalized, and oppressed without succumbing to hate for the oppressor. Nothing could be harder or more essential for us to flourish. Our local, state, and national leaders have a responsibility to unify and advance our communities, not to divide us from our neighbors simply because of who we are. We are called to love our neighbors and welcome the stranger. The Unitarian Universalist Council pledges to support the principles to guide Ohio's immigration discussion and to continue to do our part working on these issues. Thank you for your time.
Now I'll call on the Reverend James Judicatory, General Presbyter of the Presbytery of Cincinnati.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all this morning. Just like to say that I endorse and support the Declaration of Principles to guide Ohio's immigration discussion as released today by the Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition of Cincinnati. The Presbytery of Cincinnati, as a judicatory member of Mark, stands with its partner communities of faith throughout the greater Cincinnati area in affirming that justice and compassion must be the basis for all policies relating to immigration. Failure of policies and leadership to uphold these values have resulted in the abuse and mistreatment of immigrants and their families, as is in the case in Southwest Ohio and elsewhere throughout our nation. I urge elected state leaders to adopt the principles put forward by Mark as a foundation for statewide discussion on immigration and as a guide for the building of more stronger and diverse communities. Thank you.
Now I'll call on Terenzo L. Elmin, representing Iman Ilyas Nasheed, the Cincinnati Islamic Center. Terenzo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, our country is currently experiencing a time of great challenge. Let us not allow this time of difficulty to cause us to abandon our best sensitivities and their rational complement, giving license to a retreat of conscience from the suffering of others. Rather, we should refresh our hearts and minds by remembering that what America stands for is enshrined in the robed female figure residing at Liberty Island. This landmark statue has become our country's symbol of freedom and opportunity. It has become the representative symbol of America itself. We support and seek a policy that aligns itself with the highest ideals of ethical civility and does not fail our country's responsibility to keep its promise. We trust our government to be capable of designing a policy that will keep this promise without sacrificing the integrity of our borders or our rule of law. Therefore, the Cincinnati Islamic Community Center supports Mark's principal statement. We also conclude that a failure to fully register the benevolent yet pragmatic nature of these principles and not to pass immigration policy in Ohio, which honors the noble essence of our country's purpose, would prove to be an unfortunate and expedient amendment to the very spirit of America.
Now I'll call on the Reverend Ruth Brandon, Association Minister, United Church of Christ, Southwest Ohio, Northern Kentucky Association.
Like the city of Cincinnati, the United Church of Christ has a historic constituency built on immigrants. Many of those in Cincinnati have German ancestry. The diversity within our denominational fellowship matches that of the United States, and we continue to receive immigrants, currently many from Asia and the Pacific. We live with the expectations that although we will find agreement in essentials, there will always be disagreement as well. We nonetheless expect that we will remain in fellowship and in dialogue, learn from one another, and find it enriching and helpful. We expect better solutions because we bring our different thoughts, values, and opinions to the table. Real dialogue on any topic requires common understanding of basic principles for respectful discussion. Therefore, I affirm wholeheartedly that the topic of immigration should be engaged with civility, clarity, and pursuit of reasoned outcomes that are good for all. I endorse the Mark principles. In both Old and New Testaments, our biblical mandate is to treat the stranger well, to welcome sojourners as we would welcome people we already know. Compassion and respect for all people, even enemies, is what we teach. The 5 principles outlined by Mark are not new ideas, but in a context in which we hear voices that seem to have forgotten them, they need reaffirming. These principles derive from our political heritage as Americans as well as from our faith heritage. Fairness, rule of law, respect for all persons and for all points of view. The world has looked to the United States as